Hey there, and welcome back. This is Ian Seelig here with Seelig Science, and today we're going to talk about creativity and what that may look like using Google Apps. So, creativity can take so many different forms. For us in instructional design, creativity for me looks like not teaching the way that you were taught. I think it's easy for teachers or instructional designers to default to things they've already seen. Creativity is a way or an avenue to provide a new approach to using a tool, to delivering a lesson. So a little thinking outside of the box, and I think this is what drives innovation and leads us to discovering what may be more effective techniques. With that, what could creativity look like in an evaluation? So I've chosen 3 different tools for us to check out today. All of these are accessible within Google. I'm here on Google Drive, which is one of their bases. And if you look at that little waffle on the top, there are tons of Google apps to choose from. There are huge opportunities for creativity with each and every one of these, but for our evaluation sake today, we're going to zoom into just a couple here. Google Forms and Jamboard, and lastly, YouTube. Up here at the top. So let's jump into a Google form. Here I've got one example of a form that I've used. This is a great assessment tool. Allows you to quickly get feedback. You can create these questions pretty simply. There's a variety of different types, but how can we get creative in using this if we're going to evaluate whether or not our learners have achieved the intended outcomes? And of course that involves needing a clear objective. One way that I think is an awesome use of Google Forms for you to get a little more creative with and get good evaluation is adding sections. And what these sections do can split these questions separately. As an instructional designer, if I want to get some evaluation back from this, I might make sections that focus on different objectives. That way it's really easy for me to use this assessment data to see which topics may be less clear for students. You might even tier these questions, starting with some basic recall questions and moving up through Maslow's hierarchy towards application style questions, and seeing and evaluating how your students did as they progressed through those questions and they got potentially more difficult. Of course, there are other great tools that you can do within Google Forms, like go ahead and add those objectives here. It could be helpful for you, and in a feedback setting for your students, they then know what the goal of this question was. So it kind of can help you as an evaluator and help students. There's also plenty of things that you can do with that feedback to help students. That's where you're going to get creative. Okay, so that's Google Forms. A new tool that I've started experimenting with is this one called Jamboard, and in some ways it's kind of like a collaborative PowerPoint or Google Slides, but again, your objective needs to be clear. For me, using this example, my objective may be I want to know if students are able to pull information out of a text. We're doing some science reading here, so I've got a question: how might the information in this article that I've linked influence policy decisions about where and how to invest in saving coastal communities? So I'm seeing if they are able to go in, pick apart this information. So my objective is not this question. My objective is going to be those students' abilities to find or use information to answer that question. Where students are involved is they, for the directions for this one, have added things. There's all sorts of options on the left. For me, I chose sticky notes. So now I'm evaluating, were these students able to pull information from that article to make a conclusion? And it looks like some of them are definitely able to. So this is another way to creatively get some evaluative ability to evaluate whether or not your instruction is effective by seeing how well students achieve this objective. If they don't, you might need to go back and do some changes. So that's Jamboard. Plenty of options for creativity. This could be trying to make associations where you're adding pictures. Post-it notes may be a more simple version. You could use your color coding to help with that. Anywho, that's up to you. And our last one, I'll jump in here, is YouTube. And this might seem a little funky, but I think YouTube allows us, just like I'm doing with this video, to show what you know. And so if I wanted to evaluate my students' knowledge, I could have them create a YouTube account or channel, they are able to unlist that video so that it doesn't need to be public or viewable by other people. But here's the easy ability for them to create a video. That's just right up here. If they want to record it separately and upload it or go live, either one is an option for them to record the ability to show what they know. So if I'm evaluating whether or not students have learned what I intended them to, I might take all those videos, do a review of them, see if they hit explaining those objectives that I had set out. If they have, great. This is an avenue for students to speak and talk about things, not necessarily have to type. So we're hitting a different modality of expressing knowledge. I can then use those videos that are posted to evaluate the success of those objectives being met or not. It could even be as simple as my objective is, can you add a video to the internet? Here I'm going to know whether or not you've been able to add it, because I will be able to find that video or access it as an instructor. This is one other tool. You may want them to go beyond that. They may need to create a channel or categories. Your objective could revolve around, have you used certain descriptors? Again, this creativity is up to you. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully that gives you some food for thought on how to creatively use Google Apps to evaluate your learners. Those objectives are key. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with.